What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHocks42 on the internet, and today I want to talk about the first of many previews that we're going to be doing here on this show for March of the Machine Aftermath. So Wizards released all the cards in the set. It's going to be coming out in just a few weeks here, so they just dumped it on us. It's a small set with only 50 cards, so they're like, here you are, everybody, enjoy, which I'm cool with. I don't mind getting the binge drop of spoilers. I'm here for it. So today I wanted to talk about a card that changes the way planeswalkers behave in kind of a cool way. And believe it or not, based on that description, you may not know which one I'm referring to, because there are two in this set. The one I want to talk about today is Deification, because I think this is an enchantment that is just interesting. Like, that's really bottom line. It is very unique in what it does. And the fact that it's in white, I also find very interesting. So let's get into it. Deification is an enchantment that has a very unfortunate name, if I may say. Deification, on the one hand, the name is very evocative. It's very clearly like the presence or the elevation of something to a status of being worshipped. That's pretty cool, and it tells a very interesting story. And combined with the art that shows a shrine to the angel Elspeth being created, and where people appear to be like leaving offerings, like, all right, Elspeth has clearly been deified in this situation, so okay, cool. However, it is one letter away from the word defecation. And I find that so unfortunate, because the concept is great. It's a cool single word. But when your eyes are scanning it quickly, you're just like, whoa, they put that on a magic card? It's like, wait, no, they didn't. Okay, we're good. But wow, really? And so anyway, I find that unfortunate. But regardless, Deification, what does it do? Enchantment, 1 and a white. As Deification enters the battlefield, choose a planeswalker type. Planeswalkers you control of the chosen type have hexproof, as long as you control a creature. If damage dealt to a planeswalker you control of the chosen type would result in all loyalty counters of it being removed, instead, all but one of those counters are removed. So this is pretty sweet, because it gives, well, actually, it's funny, I mentioned the word worship earlier. This is actually very comparable or very similar to a card called Worship, where it was an enchantment where if you had a creature and your life total would be reduced to 1, or lower, is reduced to 1 instead. So as long as you have a creature on board, you're effectively indestructible, which is pretty cool. I believe it's only for damage, not life loss. So it has its limitations. It's one of those, like, when you're first playing, you think, oh my goodness, this card's completely broken, and then you find like a million ways to get around it. So it's actually not, which is why you don't see it like in competitive decks. But it's a neat mechanic, and it's kind of cool. So this, doing that for your planeswalkers, kind of neat. It's a cool throwback, cool callback to a piece of Magic's history that, like, honestly, I didn't, like, even really draw that parallel until I started. I was pressing record when I realized that. So it's interesting. It's kind of a fun nod to that. Also, the fact that it's an enchantment that can protect your planeswalkers is something that's pretty cool, because a lot of enchantments or a lot of tricks that you can use to help protect your walkers have a really strong limitation in the way that indestructible works alongside planeswalkers. So if you cast a Tamiyo Safekeeping targeting your planeswalker that maybe has 3 loyalty counters on it while it's being attacked by a 3-power creature, sure, your planeswalker is now indestructible and it does have hexproof, so okay, cool. But it's still dealt damage. So it's still, the 3 damage is still coming through, and as a result, the loyalty counters are still removed. Indestructible only goes into play if somebody's targeting it with a destroy effect, or, well, if it's a creature, because that damage is checked against toughness, not against loyalty counters. When loyalty counters come into play, indestructible doesn't really matter. So being able to give a planeswalker indestructible in a lot of situations is a big fat whatever. Like, it just doesn't change the game in any meaningful way. So it's like, all right, cool. Meanwhile, this ability of if damage would reduce its loyalty to 0, or have all of the loyalty counters be removed, you remove all but 1. And so as a result, your planeswalkers are effectively indestructible as long as you control the creature. So you do have to jump through some hoops here. You can't just throw this down alongside, your planeswalkers and just be fine. You do have to have some creatures online, or at least a creature online, in order to protect your walker. But if you have a walker that has a good +1 or +2, you know, a plus or a 0 ability that is very strong, this can do good work, with an exception. And that exception is the Wandering Emperor and all the iterations of the Wandering Emperor. You'll notice it says choose a planeswalker type. Planeswalker types are the name of the planeswalker in the type line, appropriately enough. And you'll notice like every single card that depicts Elspeth, whether that's Elspeth Knight Errant, Elspeth, Archangel Elspeth, Elspeth Sun's Champion, whatever the case may be, they all have the type line Elspeth. So all of them are depicting Elspeth. So if you have a deck where you run every Elspeth or all the Elspeths you can do, you can use Deification in that deck, and all of your Elspeths are now protected in this way. They all have hexproof, and if you have a creature, they effectively just can't die to damage. So cool. That's great if you're running an Elspeth deck or maybe a Gideon deck. Say there are a lot of good white planeswalkers, and there are also Teferi and Huatli and a whole bunch of planeswalkers in white that have a lot of different iterations. So if you're in like Commander or something like that, you can build a deck themed around them and get good value off this. However, this card in Standard is going to be the bulkiest of bulk rares that will never be draft. Well, actually, I don't. Is this set even draftable? Regardless, you're not going to see this card in Standard at all. Hard pass 0, because the Wandering Emperor, who is the only planeswalker, I believe. No, Elspeth is as well. There are few planeswalkers, let me rephrase. There are few planeswalkers right now in Standard that have multiple cards represented. But we have multiple Elspeths. We have the Elspeth from SNC as well as the one from Mom. But there are also multiple Wanderers, and 2 really good ones that are already seeing a ton of play in the same deck. The Eternal Wanderer and the Wandering Emperor. However, the Wanderer does not have a planeswalker type. There is no planeswalker type for her. So, when the Wanderer was first introduced in War of the Spark, and we didn't know her identity, that kind of made sense because, like, okay, what name do you put there? It's like, well, there really isn't one. And it's funny, now that we even know who she is, where she came from, and all that jazz, we still don't know her. Well, actually, I don't think she has a name. It's kind of weird. So it's like, what would you, like, even now, what would you put there? Would you put Wanderer? Would you put Emperor? I don't know, because Wandering Emperor would probably be a bit too much to fit on the type line. But all the same, regardless, she doesn't have one. And that's a real shame, because this card would work really well in the current mono white list, because if you could drop this with an Eternal Wanderer on board, because she has a 0 that produces a 2/2 double striking creature. And so this would protect her from being targeted from any piece of removal. And as long as those creatures are around, attacking her is not going to matter. You can just keep zeroing. Like, that would be incredible, and a setup that a lot of Standard players would really enjoy being able to do, but we can't, because the Wanderer doesn't meet the qualifications for this. She's unaffected, she cannot be chosen with Deification, and that's a bummer. I did mention Elspeth though, and I'm just looking at white planeswalkers. There are plenty of other colors, but the thing that's weird about this card, like, it feels like it's built for Commander. Like, this feels like a card that is absolutely 100% built for hardcore Commander players who have like a Gideon deck where they have like every single Gideon ever printed, and run this, in that kind of a deck, and just name Gideon, and then all their walkers are like souped up in this way and protected. So I think that's kind of neat. But so this is it's funny. This card is interesting and neat and flavorful and cool, but very limited. Very limited. And as a result, I don't think we're going to see it played with really any frequency, and I think that's kind of a shame, because it's a cool card. Like, I like it a lot. It's funny, I joked on Twitter that I don't particularly think, I don't think this card is poopy, which is a joke that I'm going to stand by, but at the same time, it's going to be cheap. Like, if you're using one of the few decks that can really take advantage of this, it's going to be inexpensive for you. So that's neat. Anyway, thank you so much for checking out this edition of the Overthinking MTG podcast. I appreciate it very, very much. We're going to have more coming. Actually, by the time you're watching this, I am probably on the road, if not already at the convention center in Minneapolis. So if you're there, come find me. I'm going to be walking around with a Magic Jank jersey on for at least one of the days. And yeah, I'm going to be the heavy-set white guy with spectacles playing Magic cards. I'm sure that'll narrow it down. Anyway, thank you so much. I'll catch you on the next one.